Welcome to the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast. Lots to talk about this week. How are things in Scotland, Fino?
Yeah, good. Glad to be back, having missed the last time round.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been tough being with Scott Brown and the Celtic team down in Dubai. Still in sunny Spain, soaking up the sun, Kev?
I am, yeah, but we just heard our lockdown's getting tougher, so...
Yeah, I think it's getting tougher everywhere. We are Joe-less this week, and we're sad to say that Joe is not with us. He was so infuriated by Southampton's loss to Leicester. He actually went straight to Ralph Hasenhuttl house to complain. Hasenhuttl got him in a chokehold and called the police. So Joe is trying to get out of prison now. Hopefully he's back on Tuesday. Of course, very upset that Southampton lost to Leicester. I mean, I think Joe thought that Southampton were going to go the rest of the season unbeaten. Anyway, we're here moving on. Tonight there are two games kicking off very soon in an hour. West Ham at home to West Brom. West Ham are looking good, Fino.
I think this game's going to be really tasty, to be honest, because, Big Sam loves proving people wrong. And, who better to prove wrong than your previous owners that, got rid of you? And it's kind of got all the makings of a bit of an embarrassing night for West Ham, I think. I know that seems so ridiculous having, seeing where West Brom have been. But I just feel like West Ham at the moment, they're in a bit of a lull. We sold Haller for, half of what he actually cost us. We just need to do a bit more with the ball. We're tough to beat, but we've scored the fewest goals in the top half of the table. So, without Haller, without Antonio being at full fitness, he's got dodgy hamstrings. We really need to invest up top in January. And I just feel like this is a bit of a banana skin for West Ham.
How much did Haller go for?
I think it was 25 million euros. So just over half of what we paid.
Okay, yeah, because I read a lot of Newcastle fans were talking about, we should do with Joe Linton what West Ham did with Haller and cut your losses and get him off the books. But, West Brom had a huge win at Wolves, 3-2. They were, I think, 2-1 down. They got a penalty at the end. And, Big Sam will be delighted that the miracle, the project to keep West Brom up is still alive, of course, and we're only halfway through the season, so it's very possible. But I think West Ham, like you said, solid at the back. Antonio's back now. If they nick a goal, I think you'll have enough for West Brom.
I think you made a really good point there, JP. The season's only halfway through. I mean, we're all guilty of this, aren't we? We're like leaping to conclusions all the time, and I just think, there's no reason at all now. Like, apart from Sheffield United, where you have to say it looks difficult, for no one else is anything decided in this league yet. And if all season we've talked about, it just takes going on a little bit of a roll, isn't it? And actually, West Ham are on a bit of a roll. So hear me, in this specific match, I'm not talking up West Brom's chances in this, necessarily. I'm just saying they're far, far from down. But actually, I think West Ham, you're right, they lack a little bit up top. But they're getting full value for the goals they are scoring, aren't they? That's a great couple of wins, isn't it, in these last two games? So yeah, money's on West Ham for this one. But I'm saying, don't quite write off West Brom for salvation.
Leicester against Chelsea at 9:15 tonight, Central European time. Leicester, of course, won against Southampton to push them up to second momentarily. Looking good as well. They could have beat Southampton by more, and they were pretty easy going for them, really. Chelsea got the win in the derby against Fulham, red card, and of course, they got the goal late on. This is a tasty game, really, and if Chelsea have any genuine title aspirations, I think they need to get something from this game. But Leicester, at home, they're solid. They're very hard to beat, especially when they have the willing runners like Vardy and the guile and creativity of Maddison. I fancy Leicester to do Chelsea tonight and to push on.
I think they should go into the game full of confidence, to be honest. That was a really strong performance against what is a very good Southampton team. And, it's all looking pretty positive for them. I think they're unbeaten in at least their last five. Their individuals are starting to come on to a bit of a game as well. Not just in the kind of the last few games, but over the course of the season. If we talk about players like Maddison, Tielemans, these kinds of players, they're kind of taking the onus off of, or the spotlight off of somebody like Jamie Vardy, allowing him still to, bag a few goals here and there. I think this should be a good game. I wouldn't expect anything else other than Leicester to go forward. I think that's what Brendan Rodgers does with his teams. And a Chelsea team that kind of perhaps will have to live with being under the cosh a little bit.
I think the other thing is they look really solid, didn't they, against Southampton? They looked like they weren't going to concede. I thought Schmeichel, you sometimes forget about Schmeichel, but he's class, isn't he? He's a really class keeper as well to add on to that team. And again, I thought they looked really impressive. You're right, they're unbeaten in 5. They've only lost once in about 7 or 8 or something like that. And Chelsea, they picked up the win, like you said, JP. But again, they weren't impressive, were they? And given that colossal investment, sorry, I'll come back to that once or twice. Big clubs have every right to spend a lot of money. We were just hoping for a bit more, weren't we? It always looked like it was going to spark a lot more, and the spark's missing.
It's a really good point, Kev, because I think I put it in the group chat earlier that, Chelsea are rumoured to be looking at Haaland, and you just wonder whether or not that's them looking to cut their losses in terms of Werner already, just after 6 months. You don't need both Werner and Haaland. Of course, it would be an embarrassment riches if you did, but it feels like almost already Chelsea are looking forward to going, okay, cool, how can we replace what has come before? And, if you're Timo Werner, that does your confidence no good whatsoever. And so, it's really difficult. He had a really terrible miss against Fulham. You just wonder whether or not they're going to cut their losses there, like, West Ham did with Sebastian Haller.
I'm not sure how old Timo Werner is, but it would be a perfect exchange, obviously with money as well, considering how successful Haaland has been. But I mean, Werner to Dortmund plus, say, 40 million. He's a German national player, German speaker, straight to Dortmund. It would suit him fine. Haaland always said he wanted to play in the Premier League. His dad, he was born in England, so maybe for Leeds, but obviously Leeds can't afford him. Chelsea would be an answer. Going back to Leicester, if Leicester win tonight, they're top of the league, and that's no fluke. Brendan Rodgers, he really plays to, I think, the main player's strengths. As in, he knows ball down the channel for Vardy all the time, or in the middle through to Maddison. Tielemans is one of the most underrated players in the Premier League. The guy is he's a machine, and he's a fantastic find. So yeah, I think Leicester to get the win and Leicester to go top. Fino.
Yeah, just to add on to that Leicester team, if I look at their lineup, and I know that, Kev, you talked about Schmeichel, but that defence is really top class as well. And that's marshalled by somebody who I don't necessarily think gets a lot of praise in that back line, which is Johnny Evans. But if you look at that, James Justin, Wesley Fofana, I think came in for, I think it was 20 million in the summer. And he's been a really good find alongside the Premier League experience of somebody like Schmeichel, somebody like Johnny Evans. And they're as miserly at the back as they are expansive going forward. And yeah, you do have to think that they must be really thinking that they can not only just push for top 4, but definitely for the title.
Good point there, Fino, about how Leicester are so miserly at the back. And you have to look at, in the last 2 seasons, they've lost 2. Now, this doesn't hold as much as it did before, but 2 England internationals, and Harry Maguire and Ben Chilwell. And they'll be massive players to replace, but it's like they haven't missed them at all once. The Leicester machine just rolls on. Tomorrow, Leeds against Southampton is, of course, postponed. So we 2 games tomorrow, 7 p.m. Central European time. Man City, who were top of the league, or second in the league, sorry, they're just right up there with the games in hand, against Aston Villa, who haven't played in a while and have a lot of games in hand as well. As impressive as Aston Villa have been this season, I don't think they have a hope, really. I think Man City are going into this ruthless mode now. And I read today, though, something funny that Guardiola said, we don't need players in January, we need Aguero. But I fancy City to carry on. I mean, they were really impressive, 4-0 winners against Palace, and it could have been more.
Yeah, I mean, you said that, you went, did they go top? I mean, don't worry. They're going to be top soon, and they're going to be top for a long, long time. And that's not me bulking it, as you say. That is just, they are now by far the most impressive outfit in the Premier League and look absolutely unstoppable. No, you're right. Villa are the forgotten team, aren't they? Because they do have so many games in hand. They're down in the bottom half of the table. unbelievably. Which actually, I think that's the thing. They've got too many games in hand now, haven't they? If you just like one game behind, you sort of think, oh, you can float slightly off people's radar, But 3 games, they've played 4 games fewer than some teams at the moment. Not all the top teams, but some teams have played 19. They've got 26 points. If they win all 3 of if they were to win all 3 of their games in hand, they'd be right up to second. Which for parts of this season they've looked well worth. It's a big ask though, isn't it, to win all 3? And I think maybe it's this time of year as well. You can get a bit. It's sometimes hard to get going again. After a little break. Their last 2 results have not been good. Don't forget. So they haven't won since Boxing Day. I really like Aston Villa, as you know. They battered us. They battered Liverpool, and were well worth it. They looked absolutely fantastic. And I would love, hope against hope, that they can pull something off against City. But I'll be astonished if they do.
Yeah, I have some bad news for you, Kev. I don't think they are going to. I read earlier that Man City have won their last 5 Premier League games, shipping just 1 goal. And that's the longest winning sequence by a team all season. So as they're really hitting their stride and crescendoing into what is title-winning form this season, Aston Villa aren't, and they seem to just be a little bit kind of leggy. I don't know if they're leggy or if they're just a bit disjointed. This season, out of all seasons, has shown us that any team on any given day can win. But I think Man City, surely they've got more than enough to dispatch Villa.
Yeah, I think we all agree that Man City will take the points at home to Villa, Aguero or not. The late game tomorrow night, 9:15, Fulham against Manchester United. Fulham, who'd drawn 5 games in a row before they lost to Chelsea. I thought they played well against Chelsea up to the red card, and that swung it obviously in Chelsea's way in the derby game. Well, I don't think they'd beaten Chelsea in a long time, so that record was against them. But they're good to watch, and they keep the ball really well, and they're not easy to beat. Manchester United performance against Liverpool, I think it'll leave Solskjaer with a little bit of what if, because I think that was a chance to go and win at Anfield, considering who Liverpool, obviously had all the superstars in the middle of the park and up front, but Jordan Henderson and Fabinho playing centre half. I think he probably could have went for a little bit more. Saying that, it's progress for Manchester United to remain top of the league, to go to Anfield. Could have won it really if Fernandes had to put that one away. But Man United on the road again, and they won't be so cautious at Craven Cottage. They'll definitely go for Fulham, and I think they'll have too much. Fino.
Yeah, I think so too. But Fulham are playing some really nice football at the moment. I think the issue with Fulham is that they just seem to lack that killer instinct, or be able to take the chances when they really need to. I think there was a few times against Chelsea where I felt like they'd carved them open, but they just kind of they fluffed their lines a little bit in front of goal. And when you lose a player in the first half like they did against a team like Chelsea, even through all their problems that they're having, you're always going to be up against it. For me, yeah, Man United's, yes, they'll be disappointed and they'll be thinking what if with regards to their Anfield trip. But at the same time, it's no ground given to Liverpool in the race for the title. Their phenomenal away form will continue. So I'm thinking maybe a 1-0, 2-1 for Man United here.
As you can imagine, it's quite hard for me sometimes. I think I'm quite fair to Man United. It's quite hard, to be fair watching it when it's your team they're playing against. I didn't think they were all that good. United, thought they were maybe. I'd said before the game that they should be cautious. That they should go in, try and keep it tight, get the draw, and then if they manage to nick a win, then all credit to them. But I advise really that they should go in and look and keep it tight, and they did. Didn't really have much of the ball a lot of the time, right? And they seemed pretty happy, to not have the ball. Various reasons for that, mainly that Liverpool can't score, which we'll get onto in a minute, I'm absolutely sure. So they were fairly secure. But yeah, they were just a tiny bit disappointing, I thought. I just wondered if they might step up. I thought Pogba was dangerous at times, but Bruno Fernandes, and again, Liverpool fans, so you can call it whatever you want, you can call it sour grapes or something like that. I think we've all been a bit starstruck by Bruno Fernandes, haven't we? Because he's scored a lot of goals, scored a lot of penalties, had a lot of great performances, and has won a lot of points for Man United, but hasn't really looked all that amazing against the bigger teams. I think if you go back and look at his performance against the other top 6 teams, I don't think he scored any goals against the other big teams. I think he tends to score against the small teams. All that to say, Fulham are going to play really well. They're going to keep the ball, and Man United are going to do them at least 2-0 on the break.
Yeah, I think I brought up something similar, Kev, recently about Bruno. I mean, he is a guy who has amazing positional sense. He pops up in the right place at the right time and gets on the score sheet, and he bangs in the penalties, apart from the one he missed at St James's Park. But he's nowhere near, I think, in the class of someone like Kevin De Bruyne that can change the game like that. You know, they can just turn the game on its head with an amazing pass. Fernandes he's amazing knack of being at the right place at the right time, and he's a really good finisher and striker of the ball, of a dead ball. But yeah, I don't think he's the Messiah, but he's definitely improved Manchester United.
I think what he did do is he gave that team some confidence, right? So he like I say, he's won them a lot of points. He's found ways to get points from games. But what's astonishing is someone pulled out the stats about that he's won more Player of the Month awards in his year at Man United than Cristiano Ronaldo ever did, and I think maybe as many as Steven Gerrard did in his entire time at Liverpool. And that's all I meant really about the fact that you're right. You did make that point, JP, and I think it is spot on. You know, he gets a hell of a lot of credit for being this amazing player. But you're right. He's a tier below those absolute worldy game changing type players. But you would have him on your team, wouldn't you? Especially against the lower opposition, because he just has a knack.
I think he'd get in the Newcastle team, all right, Kev. Moving on, one game on Thursday night, Liverpool against Burnley. Liverpool at home. Liverpool haven't won a game in 4. They haven't scored in 3. But I'm not buying into any crisis thing. Liverpool are 3 points off top of the league, and they're full of world stars. So, I don't think there's any need to panic. And like we said earlier on, Kev, we're only halfway through the season. So, Liverpool fans, I wouldn't say don't get too downhearted just yet, regardless of how much balking Kev will do. Liverpool will be red-hot favourites to beat Burnley. Burnley went on a little mini revival after Joe spoke to Sean Dyche on the show a few weeks ago, but they've lost the last 2. Did you see anything in that game, Fino, West Ham against Burnley, to show they have a hint of a chance at Anfield?
No, is the short answer. But I think if Burnley are to get a result out of this game, it has absolutely nothing to do with Burnley and absolutely everything to do with Liverpool. And you've talked about it there. It's 1 goal in the last 4 games or something like that. I think I read somewhere it's less than 2% of all their shots over the last 4 Premier League games have gone in. It's just not good. It's not good enough for any Premier League team, let alone a team that's challenging for the title. So if you look at Burnley, they can be stout. They can make it tough for Liverpool. They should really take a leaf out of Fulham's book and how they played. You expect it to be a home win. If any of Liverpool's striking combinations start to hit a bit of form, it could be a very long night for Burnley.
I've been amazed. I've been reading all this stuff, in the papers about how astonishing it is that the Liverpool's forwards are out of form. And again, I'm going to go back and say it's not astonishing at all. And we've talked about it. We talked about it before. And I think there's always Liverpool's all 3 of those players. So Firmino, Mane, and Salah have all been through long periods where they've been absolutely terrible. Right? Maybe long periods is wrong. Mane certainly has gone hot and cold the last 3 seasons. Definitely true for Firmino. He's more cold than hot in front of goal anyway, regardless of the job he does. And Salah as well has had periods where he just looks like he can't buy a goal, for usually only for 3 or 4 games. But what's happened is in the last 2 seasons, or what happened in the last 2 seasons or 3 seasons, was there was always one of them was in form, always at least one and maybe 2. And you saw it with Mane so many times. He would drag the team on, or he would get a goal from somewhere. He would just turn in one of those performances. Salah the same, he would just dredge it up from somewhere. He would create a goal out of nothing. But what's happened is all 3, which is bound to happen sooner or later. None of us are mathematicians probably, but you could probably, if you vectored this, you could probably work out how likely it was. But they've all hit ropey form at the same time. And it was probably inevitable. And yeah, I'm going to actually be quite positive about it, because I think there is a way out of it. and I think one of them will come good. But it's true. I mean, we could get into this. We talked about it once before. It's definitely true, and you said it just then. That having two midfielders at centre back affects the team as a whole, right? So, and it not just in the way you might think. It's not just that it's two midfielders, taken out of the creative play. It's also the fact that if I ask you guys, what's Liverpool's success been built on apart from those front three over the last 3 years, you'd say it's the fullbacks. The fullbacks going forward have been astonishing, right? So Trent and Robertson between them, all those assists. Well, they're not getting forward as much, and they're not getting forward with the same confidence, and they're not getting forward in the same way and in the same places because they've got two midfielders playing at centre back, and they have to keep an eye out for those.
Something that's been quite interesting for me as a Rangers fan who, their manager comes from the Klopp tree of coaching, shall we say, is how narrow the fullbacks are when they go forward. Because they're having to stick so narrow to those makeshift centre-backs, they're not giving themselves the space to be able to go past a man or to be able to cross in from deep. The centre-back missing, or the centre-backs missing, has not only created a lack of confidence at the back, but it's also creating a lack of willingness to go that extra yard going forward because they don't feel confident enough. The front three don't feel confident enough that the back is going to be, it's going to be swept up, or that somebody's coming in on the rebound, or whatever it is. The one thing that I do want to say that goes in Burnley's favour, they were the only team last season to leave Anfield with a point. And, for whatever reason, Sean Dyche knows how to play really stuffy, I want to say aggressively defensive football. It's really, Liverpool are really crying out for somebody to take that team by the scruff of the neck and go, right, I'm going to win us points on my own come hell or high water. And it needs to come through somebody in that front five, shall we say. And then those wing backs will start feeding off of that confidence as a team, and they'll start getting forward, they'll start being more wide, they'll be drawing people out and therefore giving the front three a bit more space to work their magic, because undoubtedly they are very talented players, but at the moment if you're so narrow, you're just giving the defenders the easy job of stuffing all the passing lanes.
Just going to go back on something I asked you a few weeks ago, Kev. I asked you, I think, were teams figuring out how to defend against Liverpool? And were they figuring them out? And the hindsight, the flip side of the coin of what we just spoke about there, lads, is that Liverpool's main strength seems to be, obviously for the last 2 seasons, I think, from those fullbacks, raiding down the wings, getting the ball in the box early, and you've got someone in front of the goal, another striker pulls out the penalty spot, and bang, it's a goal. I've noticed, particularly in the Newcastle game, Newcastle doubled up, and the left and right wingers came back to protect the fullback against the raiding Liverpool fullback, who's, be it Robertson or be it Trent. And then on the other side, okay, so that source is dried up. Then you're looking at the centre midfield. Obviously, Jordan Henderson, I don't think he's the most creative player in the world. Alcantara, given time, I think he's world class, and he could be the one to turn it on. So they haven't scored in 3, but they're only 3 points off the top. Just needs a goal, and everything's back on.
I don't think it's as simple as teams working out. I said that last time, didn't I? I don't think so. I'll probably proved wrong again. I don't think it's as simple as teams working them out. But you're right. I think, if they are doubling up on our fullbacks, then they need to find another way of playing. And I think what Klopp, I don't think it was desperation at all, but I think turning to Shaqiri for the game against Man United was interesting, right? And I think it was almost an admission that they need to find a different way to play, and he did pretty well. And Thiago, I thought, was fantastic. I really did. I think he's obviously a class player, right? I think it's a shame he's been injured, and a shame so many of his teammates have been injured, because I think you could build the Liverpool 3.0 of Klopp, if you like, out of Thiago in the middle of the park, because he's just perfection on the ball. But I think, it wouldn't have been a problem except for those 3 strikers or 3 forwards being out of form at the same time, and Jota, who we always like to mention on this show, having an injury worse than was suspected at first, right? Klopp said he took a bit of a knock whenever it was. And, we haven't seen him since. I think last time we saw him in training, last time he was with the team, he was in a knee brace, so he's not coming back anytime soon. So, Shaqiri was their plan B. And what they do next, God knows. They need a plan C, and I don't know who it's going to be. Sometimes you need to elevate a player from from the reserve team, don't you? It's a young player you need. Sometimes it's a Rhian Brewster. Oh no, they sold him, so it's not going to be him. I don't know, but yeah, whether it's someone bundling one over the line,
Divock Origi.
Divock Origi, it's just it's depressing when someone like that comes on, to be honest, because I know he's had a bit of a magic touch at times in the past, but this season or whatever, he's not looked like helping the cause at all. And no, I think Liverpool, we talked before about Liverpool not wanting to spend a lot of money, right? The owners have not wanted to go out in the current situation, the COVID situation, and spend £50 million. And I think, I have no idea. None of us have any idea. But I still wonder why Liverpool didn't make that bet on Haaland. Having seen him play against us in the Champions League and seen how devastating he was, half fit, coming off the bench, making life absolutely hell for us. It's fine to get Minamino for 10 million or 8 million or whatever it was, which is a bargain, right? So you're not going to lose money. But man, it was time to take a punt then. And it's easy to say that in hindsight, but we'd all watched him at Salzburg and we knew, that he was. It wasn't just because he was in the Austrian league. He was the top scorer in the Champions League. But Liverpool, not being prepared to put their money in their pocket, for the last couple of seasons might come back to bite them.
What about another current Salzburg player in Patson Daka? Somebody who will be relatively cheap. The thing about Liverpool is that you guys do have the resources to be able to, take a punt on somebody for 6 months. And if it doesn't work, it's not like West Ham taking a punt on Haller, spending 50 million and selling them for 25. If it doesn't work out for a Patson Daka or somebody similar like that, you can sell them for cost or a slight, loss. But the benefit of bringing him in and him scoring 5-10 goals in the next 6 months is, almost incalculable for a team like Liverpool.
Yeah, it's not a bad shout, that, actually, because again, you may remember Liverpool played Salzburg in pre-season and Dakar scored 2 absolutely belting goals, made the defence look like idiots, to be honest. And we all thought at the time, well, it's a real outside bet, but maybe Liverpool would come in for him. Ideal, to be honest. And I don't think you could lose on him because, like you say, as long as it wouldn't be 50 million, if it would be 25 or 35, and if most of it's in installments anyway in these days, and you're going to be able to sell him on to a West Ham or a Newcastle for most of the money. If it doesn't quite work out, then yeah, absolutely. But do I think it's going to happen? Absolutely do not know. I do not see the Liverpool, the suits actually bringing out the checkbook.
I can't believe we're actually having this conversation. Liverpool have Mane, Salah, Firmino, Divock Origi, Wolves' best player from last season in Jota. 5 of the best forwards in the world. These guys won the Champions League and the league in the last 2 seasons. They don't become bad players overnight. So I don't think Liverpool need to buy anyone. They just need to figure out a different way of playing against stubborn defences, I think. You know what I mean? And that's pretty much it. If they need anyone, they might need possibly a centre half, to come in, so then you can free up some to play midfield. But I'm not buying any crisis to Liverpool at all. I think they'll be just fine. And again, it's the usual balking. 1 game left, of course. Moving on, there is the FA Cup this weekend, but there's 1 Premier League game on Saturday night, and this was the first game of the season to be postponed by COVID at Villa Park. Aston Villa against Newcastle. Villa will have played against Man City. Of course, they're playing tonight. Newcastle will have maybe an extra day or a day's rest on them, but I don't think that will really help, to be honest. Villa, of course, and Newcastle both out of the FA Cup. This quote that I read from a Newcastle fan that was interviewed by the local newspaper, the Newcastle Chronicle, and the headline stuck out, and it said, "We are sleepwalking to relegation." And that, for me, is exactly what happened. If you seen the game last night, Steve Bruce came out and he said, the gloves are off. And he played Andy Carroll up front with Callum Wilson. And he dropped, finally, Sean Longstaff, but played Joe Linton on the left wing. Now, if you're going to play Andy Carroll, there's only one way you can basically play his strengths, and that's to get the ball wide and get it in the box and use his aerial ability. But instead of putting a Matt Ritchie on the left wing, or even a Dwight Gale, who has been shunned since he scored a winner against West Brom, he plays Joe Linton on the left wing. And, there was just long balls from the back. And basically, the team last night that was supposedly gloves off and attack-minded should have been played against Sheffield United, who are bottom of the league, Whether it would have made a difference or not, I don't know. But I really believe in those words. Newcastle United are sleepwalking to relegation. And if I look at the teams below Newcastle in the table, Brighton, Fulham, and Sheffield United in particular, play decent football. You can tell that Fulham and Brighton are coached. They mightn't have the money that Newcastle had to spend on the likes of Joe Linton, but they're coached and they keep the ball well. And they have ideas and they have a way of changing the game if it's not going well. Newcastle don't have that. And it's really hopeless. And then the players that I seen last night, and then they haven't won in 9 games. There's no fight, there's no hope, and there's no ideas. And now, obviously, do you get rid of Steve Bruce? Everyone thought he'd be gone by now. That he won't hire a foreign coach if somebody does come in. The names that have been branded about are Mark Hughes, Nigel Pearson, and Eddie Howe. Apparently Eddie Howe is red hot favourite for the Celtic job. But if you're a coach like a Mark Hughes or a Nigel Pearson, would you go and work for someone like Mike Ashley, who said there's no money, there's only going to be loan signings if possible in January, where it's a really hard place to go because the fans are always, unless you're Rafa Benitez. Rafa Benitez was loved by Newcastle because he went there and he stuck by them and he stayed in the Championship. Steve Bruce wasn't wanted. 1, he's ex-Sunderland. And 2, no one's going to be really happy in Newcastle until the owner is gone. And I really feel there's a huge problem now. And I think, if a coach comes in, he has to come now. Because we're at the 19th of January now and the transfer window is going to close in a couple of weeks. So if a new coach comes in, they're clearly in need of players because the players are not good enough. Newcastle are where they are in the table due to a last-minute win against West Brom, a miracle point away to Tottenham. Some of the earlier results, when they got a couple of lucky results, the Liverpool performance was really, they fought and they were lucky to get a point, but they fought for it. But since then, out of the FA Cup to Arsenal, unlucky. Brentford in the League Cup, you haven't won anything in 30 years, 40 years. You have a chance to get in the semi-final. And against Brentford, they were awful. And I don't see anything changing, and I don't see a way out. And I don't see, any hope, to be honest. And those words, sleepwalking to relegation, I think is what's going to happen.
Yeah, look, I think my fandom in Scotland is probably well placed to empathise with Newcastle fans in terms of the owner of Newcastle. It's very difficult, I think, for fans that don't know how Mike Ashley operates a football club to really understand how suffocating he can be of what is a very vibrant and passionate fan base. It took Rangers 6 years after the current owner of Newcastle left the club to get themselves into anywhere near the state that they were historically, shall we say. And for a club like Newcastle, it's a difficult one because they don't have the historic success that necessarily would attract foreign investors. We had the Saudi investment debacle. It's very difficult to see why somebody would deal with Mike Ashley. He's so, conniving. And look, you can't really doubt his business skills because he is a billionaire, but it's the way in which he goes about business that makes him so difficult to deal with. And that's kind of the off the field stuff. The on the pitch stuff is also equally as bleak for Newcastle at the moment. I thought it was really interesting the way that Arsenal played against Newcastle, the other night. They just let the wingers put balls into the box. They stood off players like Almiron, who was just kind of putting in aimless balls towards Andy Carroll because they knew that the quality wasn't necessarily there to be able to, if it was going to Andy Carroll, it was going with no pace, it was loopy, and he wasn't going to be able to do anything with it. And then you look at Steve Bruce. I think, Matt Ritchie stayed on the bench all game. If you're chasing the game, okay, you were 2-0 down, but you're also in a fight. Right now, you're in a fight for relegation. Every goal counts. If that's a 3-1 as opposed to a 3-0, that's a huge difference potentially come the end of the season. It's really not boding very well for Newcastle, and it feels like, unfortunately, someone's already poached Big Sam for the Great Escape. Who do you turn to?
Big Sam was at Newcastle. He would never go back, I don't think. A good point there, Fino, and again, what I said about playing to the strengths. If you're playing 2 strikers up front, and if you're changing the system for the first time in the season, and you're going an out-and-out 4-4-2, you're playing Callum Wilson, Andy Carroll, who, in fairness, is at the highlight of his career, and his main strength is in the box. So you need players who are going to get to the byline, get balls in the box. Miguel Almiron is not a winger. I don't think anyone knows his best position. I would actually class him as a number 10. He's not an out-and-out winger who's going to beat a player and get a ball in the box. And Joe Linton certainly isn't. They had two players in Jacob Murphy and Matt Ritchie, left-footed, right-footed wingers who could have went up and down the byline and got balls into the box. That's really bad coaching. And if you look at, there's no game plan. The game plan all season seems to be let the other team have the ball and we'll hit them on the break. Now, there's one small glimmer of hope. And that is a guy who I harped on about all season. He's been injured and got caught with an Alain Sam-Maxima. Sam-Maxima is so hard to knock off the ball. He's so strong. His ability is unbelievable. So someone like him could keep the ball up the top end of the pitch and give the other players a chance to get up there. But there needs to be massive changes. There's a toxic environment and no one is happy and there's no confidence in the players at all. And unless there's drastic changes. The next two games are Villa, obviously away on Saturday, and Leeds at home on Tuesday. If those two games are lost, I think that's got to be it for Bruce. I thought, to be honest, if we lost to Arsenal last night, that's got to be it. But without doubt, I've watched every single game, and I watch a lot of football as we all do. Newcastle are 15th, but I can guarantee you this: they are the worst team in the league by a long shot, and the worst coached team in the league as well. Like if we can see this, we're no experts, but if we can see that you're playing Andy Carroll up front, the only way you can make use of him is to get the balls in the box. But you play Joe Linton and Almiron, which makes no sense at all. You look at how Fulham and how Brighton, how they're coached, how they play nice football, and that they're hard, for team. Fulham keep the ball. Newcastle can't keep the ball. They try and knock it around from midfield back to defence, but once the opposition press, it's a long ball up top to Carroll, who is surrounded by two or three defenders, and it's just pointless. It reminds me at the twilight of Trapattoni's career at Ireland. A long ball up top to somebody who hasn't got a chance, and I don't see the light, and I don't see a way out. Anyway, lads, sorry to bring you down with that, but that's how I feel. I mean, we just heard actually that Joe has been released from prison in Southampton, and Hazen Huttle, who's a fan of the podcast, is not pressing charges. That wraps up our games, of course, for this week. We will be back on next Tuesday before the next Premier League games. We couldn't leave you without another one of our poetic masterpieces from Kev.
I'm sorry, I'm going to bring you down a bit further because I'm having a go at Newcastle as well. So sorry, CAP. Here we go.
Nothing new there, buddy.
18 games played, half-time is in sight, and at Liverpool, something up front isn't right. Their latest 0-0 will kick off this summation, but will quickly arrive at the realisation that Manchester City look too hard to stop, while Newcastle fight to just stave off the drop. So with no more ado, let's dive in at the deep end and review the latest Premier League weekend. Jurgen, what's happened, mein Freund? Is this the worst moment you've had since you joined? Almost 4 hours without scoring a goal as Mane, Firmino and Salah blow cold. The unstoppable force of last season has faded. The spirit is weak, the personnel jaded. They could have played days without finding the net. The last goal scored? Dunno, I forget. United, a cautious but confident rival. Solskjaer's pulled off quite a striking revival. They may not be great, but they know what they're doing. Top four contenders? I'd call that a shoo-in. The bright spark for Liverpool, Thiago's direction. From midfield, he sprays it around to perfection. Their title hopes, though, they'll get ever remoter until they can welcome back Diogo Jota. But things do change quickly in this title race. In November, Man City were in 13th place. Unbeaten since then, 5 wins on the spin, leave the door open and Pep's in like Flynn. The rhythm was back in a 4-0 v Palace, as catchy a groove as the Jamstown Cornwallis. Sterling atoned for his penalty miss, and John Stones scored 2. Now that's taking the piss. 2 points off United with the game still in hand, the meanest defence in the whole of the land. Who of the rest might still give them a fight? Leicester in third, I suppose they just might. 2-0 v Saints thanks to Maddison's brilliance, a late one from Barnes and Schmeichel's resilience. Southampton nonplussed, and the team from the Fox Den are up into third, a point clear of Klopp's men. 2 teams from London look reasonably set, though few will still rate them a league title bet. Chelsea struck late to beat Fulham's 10 men. A turning point? Maybe, but the Blues once again, despite their investment, were far from incisive till Mount's intervention proved cruelly decisive. Tottenham were better, 3-1 v the Blades, with Dombele's stunner won for the decades. Down near the bottom, resurgent West Brom showed heart for the fight and some spot kick aplomb in a derby with Wolves that was frenzied but fun. Big Sam's revolution has clearly begun. If they're in with a shout of avoiding demotion, Newcastle, it seems, are in super slow motion, sleepwalking closer and closer to trouble as Arsenal, inspired by Aubameyang's double, clinch a 3-0 that confirms their renaissance, while Newcastle's fan base seethes with impatience. Still, all is not lost, and there's plenty of time. This league's had more drama than Amazon Prime, with more still to come in a true midweek thriller as his City host rested and dangerous Villa. Now, I'm often wrong. I make awful assertions. But if City win that, I'm afraid, lads, it's curtains.
Brilliant stuff there, Kev. Well done. I think you've outdone even yourself there this week. Super poem, Kev. Well done. That's it from us, folks. Fino, thank you very much.
Cheers, guys. Speak to you soon.
Kev, thank you.
Pleasure as always. Cheers, guys.
Thank you for listening, guys. Don't forget, please, if you are listening on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the bell notification, and that will let you know when our next podcast comes out. We'll be back again on Tuesday. Until then, enjoy the games. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to hear more of our podcasts, please click on the red subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side. Thank you.